Heroism, bravery, determination, and self-confidence are the usual traits of characters found within the battle royale and fighting genres. These traits are then incorporated into the battles themselves, elevating them beyond the sole purpose of cool action scenes and turning them into a battle of two perspectives, two ideals, and two philosophies. There's more to it than the exchange of blows. This deeper conflict between two individuals, coupled with the distinct visuals, is what gets people invested in these stories, and the outcome of the battles not only leave bodies on the battlefield, but unfulfilled hopes, dreams, and desires. Gantz is familiar with these prospects, snuffing out the lives of many throughout the series, cutting their stories short and leaving the reader with the lingering thought of, what if they had survived, in the back of their mind? But what if the character that lacked any of these distinct characteristics or ideals managed to slip by the relentless slaughter and make it to the very end? Kouki Inaba is a character of many traits, none of which being all that uplifting. Low self-esteem, an unwavering ego, crippling jealousy, and pure cowardice are all words I would use to describe Inaba. Initially, I looked down on Inaba for his cowardly ways, but as the story progressed, I just couldn't help but feel a bit bad for him. I think one of these things I initially didn't like about him was the main motivation, being Reika. From the very first mission, and from various instances shown throughout the series, it's apparent that Inaba has a thing for this superstar model. And at first it might seem that Reika would be the one to act as a catalyst to character progression. What we get in reality though is completely different. Instead of uplifting Inaba and turning him into a better person, as the series had with Kurano and other characters like Sakurai and Kaze, his obsession with Reika, and in turn his jealousy for Kurano, turns Inaba into a really self-destructive character. While I do despise characters with the sole motivation of trying to get some, I do think Inaba's main motivation being Reika, and the fact that she couldn't care less about him, is interesting. Gantz is all about forming important human connections, and finding people who are worth risking our own lives to protect. So by stripping Inaba of this, and essentially removing the essence of Gantz from his character, you make a really unique person that challenges the main theme of the story. I'd like to think that Oku had a lot of fun making this character, as in my eyes, Inaba really represents a what-if scenario. What if Kurano acted this way instead? What if someone lacked a deep connection with another? What if someone you never thought would survive made it to the end? I really like how Oku plays with some of these questions, and is still able to treat Inaba's character with respect. Going back to the topic of Reika, this obsession causes Inaba to butt heads with Kurano nearly the entire manga. This jealousy for Kurano never really goes unnoticed, but can really be seen during the Tai Kojima mission. With the team split into two groups, Inaba decides to team up with Izumi's team to take out Tai, instead of siding with Kurano. Logically, you'd think his reason behind this would be because he wants to be free, or how it's for the greater good of the people around him, but instead it's just about how he doesn't view Kurano as a leader. It's apparent that Inaba's motivation here was to solely impress Reika, or even take out his competition entirely, and it just makes him seem pathetic, considering how Kurano has gone out of his way to teach and lead the team to victory with each mission. This trend of trying to impress Reika continues throughout the manga, but while Inaba tries to prove himself as better than Kurano again and again, he never really ends up doing anything. Throughout all these missions, Inaba only manages to accumulate 10 points, getting shown up by a toddler and a panda. The Tai Kojima mission being one of the only times Inaba ever actually does something during a mission. And the target wasn't even hostile. Against any other enemy, his first reaction is to run and hide, but the second he's given the opportunity to come across as more powerful, he goes on a power trip, cementing himself as someone who only picks on people he knows he can win against. Besides the occasional happenstance, Inaba proves to be useless throughout the entire manga, but I do think that his cowardice does have a purpose. Gantz is all about coupling these really outlandish scenarios with relatable and realistic people. Characters like Kato and Kurano are supposed to represent outliers who are doing the best they can to make the world a better place, while Nishi and Izumi represent people who are more rooted in their selfish desires and motivations. But I don't think Inaba exactly fits into either of those. I think Inaba's philosophy and his portrayal of existentialism are a lot more common in real life compared to characters like Izumi, Kato, or Kurano. Inaba's existential crisis comes from the fact that he lacks any real purpose in life. I think this feeling stems from just a general unfulfillment of daily life. We don't get a lot of insight about how his life is outside the missions, but everything we do find out isn't all that eventful. He works as a regular designer, and he had a girlfriend at the time of his death before being resurrected by Gantz, but he seems to have quickly gotten over her after meeting Reika for the first time. Although we don't get a lot of information, I feel like it translates into how he's characterized during these missions, coming across as pompous and trying to act like he's better than the people he's fighting with. And as I previously stated, while he pretends to feel this way, he ends up just throwing all his ambition away in the face of danger. but I don't think his cowardice is so straightforward. Typically in anime or manga, cowardly characters are portrayed in similar types of ways. They're often portrayed in a pretty one-dimensional sense. Mineta from My Hero Academia and Zenitsu from Demon Slayer are examples that come to mind. The fear that inhabits these characters is simply there because it's one of their attributes. The author wanted them to be scared, so they are. I think Inaba's fear, on the other hand, correlates to this lack of purpose I mentioned. The other characters in the series fear dying because they would end up leaving someone behind, or they put their life on the line because they want other people to go on living. But Inaba never does any of these things. He simply runs with the intention of self-preservation, which, to be fair, is a normal human reaction. But I think deep down he's scared to die because this lack of purpose has him feeling worthless. He doesn't have anyone who loves him, he hasn't made a name for himself in the real world, and during these Gantz missions, he proves to be useless over and over. He's scared that his existence has meant nothing, and if he dies as he is, he will have died a nobody. I think this lack of necessity to the team, coupled with Reika's rejection of him, has left Inaba in a place of solitude. He believes that no one, not even the people he participates in these games with, actually cares about him. There's actually kind of a sad moment during the end of the Oni alien arc, where everyone is waiting for Sakata to come back, but Inaba ends up coming back before him, and the others just don't really care. The only person who seems happy about seeing him is the old man. And I think this feeling of loneliness reaches its boiling point right before the Italy mission. Inaba ends up having this mental breakdown and goes on to talk about how he believes this mission will be his last. He talks about how savagely people are killed during these missions and brings up the question of God's existence, talking about how these brutal deaths make him think that it's actually the devil's doing. If we look at this from the perspective of a lonely person, I think Inaba's questioning of the existence of God is really sad to think about. Regardless of the existence of God in the world of Gantz, people believe that God is with them throughout all their hardship. So for the lonely Inaba to question the existence of one is really heartbreaking. He begins to believe that the one person who's always supposed to be there for him might not even exist, leaving him truly alone in this world. His speech is then followed up by Kurano's speech, about how they've made it this far due to their own skills, and that humanity has the capability of standing up for themselves, a speech that I'd like to believe Inaba takes into this final mission. Initially, when he finds himself outnumbered by the statue-looking aliens, he does what he does best, and cowers, deciding to submit in the hopes that they spare him, which obviously doesn't happen. This is Gantz after all. But as Inaba begins to be slowly picked apart, the old man shows up to save him, shooting down the aliens as he tells Inaba to keep fighting until the very end, before getting pulled apart himself as a scared Inaba cowers on the floor. Upon witnessing his death, Inaba comes to the realization that he was one of the only ones who actually cared about him. While too late for the old man, Inaba decides that he can still live. As long as he stands up and fights right now, he can make it. Unfortunately though, it ended up being too much for him. In Inaba's final moments, he witnesses Kurano and Kato running for their lives as he utters Kurano's name before being squashed to death. Inaba's death is honestly quite tragic. Not only did he finally find the courage to fight through the old man's compassion and from Kurano's speech, but I think he finally let go of his ego and pride. I think that the final mention of Kurano's name was him acknowledging him as a leader, and also kind of a "I took your speech to heart and did something useful," or "I made a difference" type of thing. It's also worth noting that everyone got pulled out of the mission before all the aliens were dead, making the kills that he did get kind of pointless, causing his death to be this bittersweet moment of unfulfilled potential. Inaba is a character with many flaws. Ego, self-hatred, cowardness, all of these negative attributes apply to Inaba, but they also make him one of the most realistic characters of the cast. Add in his dissatisfaction with the direction his life is going, and you get an intricate character where his flaws make sense, and despite all the bad things he does, you can understand why he acts that way. Inaba's experiences throughout these missions are meant to represent how the average person would react. People may like to think that they'd act more like Kato or Kurano, but in reality that probably wouldn't be the case. This lingering anxiety from knowing you can be pulled into a deathly encounter at any moment is terrifying. It's no surprise that Inaba is scared when he comes face to face with these aliens. And although it's kind of annoying to see him cower again and again, his final moments of him finally standing up for himself and acknowledging Kurano as a leader are a perfect send-off to his flawed character. If you made it to the end of the video, give it a like or a dislike, and let me know in the comments how I can improve these videos. And as always, suggestions on covering certain characters or manga suggestions in general are always welcomed. Thanks.